All right. Welcome back to Vuln Vibes, everybody. We are diving into the fascinating, thrilling world of JuniperOS exploits.
Yeah.
I know what you're thinking.
Uh,
JuniperOS exploits. That sounds a little bit dry, right?
well,
But trust me, we're going to unpack two vulnerabilities that Juniper Networks recently disclosed that'll have you on the edge of your seat.
absolutely.
Especially if you're a network administrator, this stuff's like front page news, right?
Sure. It's critical.
So let's jump right in. The first vulnerability we're looking at today is CVE 2025-21598. That's a mouthful,
Yeah.
but it's got a cool nickname, Out of Bounds Read.
Right.
So what exactly does that mean? I mean, it sounds a little bit like a sci-fi novel.
Well, it's actually a pretty common software flaw. Imagine trying to read a page that doesn't exist in a book.
Right.
You're going to get an error.
Yeah.
Out of bounds read is kind of like that. It tricks the software into trying to access memory that's off limits.
Okay. So in this case, we're talking about Juniper's routing protocol daemon, which is basically the brain of the network, deciding where all the data goes.
Exactly. So you can imagine the chaos if that brain suddenly crashes.
Yeah. It's like a domino effect across the entire network. Websites go down, emails stop working. It's not pretty.
And the worst part, this particular vulnerability can be exploited without any authentication.
Oof, that sounds bad. So what you're saying is any bad actor out there with a bit of know-how could potentially bring down a whole network.
Pretty much, it's a serious threat.
Okay, so let's talk solutions. What can our listeners do to protect themselves from this out-of-bounds read monster?
Well, the good news is Juniper Networks has released patches for Junos OS that address this vulnerability.
Okay, great.
So the first line of defense is making sure your systems are updated to the latest patched version.
Makes sense. Patch it up, people.
Hmm.
But that's not all we've got today.
Oh, no.
We've got another juicy vulnerability to dissect. CVE 2025-21599. Now, this one has a slightly more intimidating name. Missing release of memory after effective lifetime. I'm no expert, but that sounds like a memory leak.
It is. You got it.
Yeah.
Imagine you're filling a pool with water, but you forgot to close the tap, right? Eventually, the pool overflows and you've got a big mess on your hands.
Yeah, I've done that before. Not fun.
A memory leak is kind of like that. The software keeps allocating memory, but doesn't release it when it's no longer needed.
And in this case, the water is specially crafted IPv6 packets, right?
Exactly. An attacker could flood a vulnerable system with these packets, causing its memory to overflow and eventually crash.
So it's like a digital denial of service attack. The server gets so bogged down with these packets, it can't handle legitimate requests anymore.
Exactly.
Now, this vulnerability only affects systems configured with IPv6 and running specific Junos OS evolved versions.
Right. So if you're not running those specific configurations, you might be okay.
But it's still important to be aware of the risk.
Absolutely.
So that's two pretty nasty Juniper OS vulnerabilities, both high severity, both exploitable by unauthenticated attackers.
Yeah, it's a reminder that no system is perfect.
Definitely. So what's the takeaway here for our listeners?
Patch your systems, people. Seriously, make sure you're running the latest patched versions of Junos OS.
Absolutely. And if you haven't already, consider implementing strong network monitoring and intrusion detection systems. It's like having an alarm system for your network.
Exactly. You want to catch these threats before they can do any real damage.
And that, my friends, is the end of our deep dive into Juniper OS exploits. Remember, even though these systems can seem incredibly complex, the vulnerabilities often boil down to pretty fundamental principles.
Like forgetting to turn off the tap when you fill the pool.
Exactly. Understanding those principles can help us better protect our networks and stay ahead of the bad guys.
Right.
So stay curious, stay informed, and stay secure. Thanks for tuning in to Vuln Vibes.